Notice Me Leena-Senpai is a grid-based tower defense game that places you in charge of an all-girls magic school facing off against the armies of the Demon Lord, who wants nothing more than to bring destruction to you and your school. You spend the majority of your time here placing and upgrading units across its many different levels as you hold back the waves and forces of the Demon Lord's army. I like that this is basically a tower defense game disguised as a grid-based hero defense game. Each of these are characters that you meet throughout the story, but mechanically they're also just towers that you place on the grid that come with their own unique sets of abilities. This one attacks really fast, but only things directly in front of it. This one swings slower, but it hits units adjacent to the row that it's placed on. This one constantly heals the tower in front of it, and this one shoots projectiles that pass through units several squares in front of it, and there are a ton more that you get access to as you progress through the game. Traditionally, tower defense games have a line or two where enemies all march along as towers blast away at them. In Notice Me Leena-Senpai, enemies instead spawn and march down the rows of the grid, only ever moving from right to left, minus a few of the structures you can build later on that allow you to shift them around. Another mechanic that adds to the experience and forces you to strategize a bit is that not every row is always active each round, and the spawn locations can change, sometimes every round throughout a level. And it's not just where the locations are that change, but also the number of active ones too. Sometimes there will be more, sometimes less. Throughout your time playing, you'll also need to keep an eye on the grid. It may start out where you only have access to the middle 3 rows, and then a few levels in, the 2 outside ones could open up. So now you have 5 potential rows you need to defend from the oncoming demons. Keep in mind too that this doesn't always work against you. The grid can also expand out towards the enemy spawn points, giving you more tiles that you can place units, which sometimes this helps out greatly when you're just needing those few extra spaces for towers. All of these aspects come together to deliver a pretty solid experience, although at times the balancing of waves can feel a bit off, where you'll breeze through the first 90% of a level only for the next round to suddenly overwhelm you to the point where you lose fairly instantly and have to start all over. Where I found Notice Me Leena-Senpai to start falling off is that there isn't much of a payoff for completing each level. It tries to give one by delivering more scenes telling the ongoing narrative of the girl's struggle against the Demon Lord and its armies, but the writing isn't very strong. Interactions and dialogue exchanges are surface level at best, and there's no real character or relationship development. I really like that during some of the levels you don't have access to specific towers or units because story-wise they are off somewhere else. So the story does add to the game by making some mechanics feel more meaningful while also forcing you to play around with different strategies, but that was really all the story offered, which kinda sucked because a huge part of what initially drew me to the game was that its description called it a grid-based tower defense game with visual novel elements. But I'd say that any of the original Fire Emblem games are a lot closer to a visual novel than this game is. At the end of the day, I'm not disappointed with the time I've spent playing it. It was a lot of fun learning which combinations of towers I liked. I also really enjoyed being forced to change up my strategy when different towers were unavailable. I was always kept on my toes since there was the chance of the grid expanding, and there were also a few other buildable pieces like the portal that I thought were great additions to the game. Just at this point, I've experienced enough of the game that I'm not really invested enough in the story or characters to push through and find out what happens at the end.